Today we're going to take a look at the house creation process as well as run through an example build. Dune Adventures in the Imperium has put together a simple but effective creation process as well as provided a house sheet to keep track of the player's house. Houses in Dune are a conglomerate of many of the modern aspects of life. They are the government, the organizing structures, the job providers, the landowners, and connection to the rest of the universe. Because Dune is a sci-fi fiefdom, the impact of the Dune houses on the players is second only to the actual characters the players will create themselves. As such, it is important that the players have input into the house alongside the GM. The best way to provide an overview of this process is to walk through creating a house using the provided record sheet. If you would like to follow along, the record sheet is in the appendix of the core rulebook, and we will be pulling most of the house creation information from Chapter 3 of the book. So the story and role-playing aspects of the house are easy to set up and have no direct impact on the game mechanically. These story elements are important in helping drive the impacts and persona of the house in-game. As a GM, these elements are very informative of the type of game your players are looking to play. Is it going to be combat-oriented, more agent versus architect play, a political intrigue story, that sort of stuff. When creating the house, start with the big picture and discuss these story elements. During this step, you should discuss and choose the house name, the crest, the motto, the homeworld, the house size, and the descriptive trait. Alongside these items, you'll want to discuss the house goals and what part they want to play in the overall universe. Some excellent things to think about are how combat-oriented is your house? Is your world made up of farmers or manufacturers or religious leaders? Do they have a religion? Is the house leadership ambitious to grow? Are they loyal to other houses, or do they play cutthroat politics? So for our house, we've decided on the name Cintol. Along with these more general items, you should come up with a homeworld name and determine the details of the world. What is the general environment? Who are the denizens, and how do they see the house leadership? What makes the world special? Does it have unique technology, beliefs, creatures? And so the homeworld for Cintol is the twin worlds of Hindred and Sero. So the House of Cintol is going to be a politically driven religious house. They will focus on connecting different houses, negotiations, and other aspects throughout the Landsraad and the universe. Because they are a more diplomatic house, they won't be combat oriented. Their motto is, "A centered mind is a balanced weapon." So the twin homeworlds of Hindred and Sero help the diplomatic process as they can send representatives of each house to a different world with easy transportation in between the two to communicate the deals that they're brokering. Additionally, because they are constantly involved behind the scenes with the machinations of the Landsraad, they are calculating and well organized. So while working through these ideas, you want to make sure you're working with your players to come up with a descriptive trait for your house. The descriptive trait should be one or two words that the house anchors around. Loyal, brutal, mischievous, cunning, militaristic, artistic, secretive. This trait will help the players and the GM better understand and define the house, as well as eventually become the house trait. We've determined that they will have the descriptive trait of being methodical. This will highlight and play into their more calm nature and their ability to broker deals between the great houses of the Landsraad. So next, while you're working through these general elements, the party and GM will want to start deciding what the house type or the size of the house will be. The size of the house will determine how much land is under the house's control, as well as how many domains or specialties the house will have. This information is important to think about while the players create their homeworlds. So if the team wants to control an entire planet, for example, they will want to play a major house. The house type will also impact your game by setting how much threat the GM will receive each session, how many traits the player's house will have at the start of the campaign, and how many rival houses the team will be dealing with throughout the story. So because Cintol controls entire planets and they are dealing with some of the larger houses, we've decided that Cintol will be a major house. So next you'll want to determine the domains in which your house operates. The number of domains is dependent on the house type, which can be found on page 87 of the Dune core rulebook. In short, based on the house type, the players will need to determine anywhere from 1 to 2 primary domains and 0 to 3 secondary domains. A primary domain is a service, good, or technology that your house dominates. Throughout the universe, there are only a couple of houses that may be able to compete with them in these particular markets, and they are known through the Empire for their goods or services in these fields. For example, the guild's primary domain is interstellar travel. There is no one else in the universe that can really compete with them, and even other faster-than-light travel services aren't as good. So the player's house should consider the domains while thinking about their homeworld. If the house wants to specialize in farming, for example, it would be difficult to live on a barren homeworld. Secondary domains are the markets that your house competes in but are much less effective. These domains can also be an aspect of your house that is simply not as well known as the primary domains. A house that is well known for farming may also manufacture a significant portion of its own farming equipment. While its food products may be what it's known for and sold around the universe, its equipment to farm those goods may not extend beyond the other houses in the same solar system or nearby systems. A brief list of domains can be found on page 88 of the Dune core rulebook. While the house domains won't have a direct impact on any in-game values, they will decide what types of traits the house will have access to during the creation process. So since our house is primarily diplomatic envoys and negotiators, we've determined that their primary domain will be in the political area and will be understanding. So they are well versed in the political nature of the universe and all of the players in it. So as a major house, we need to choose 2 secondary domains. The first will also be in the political area, and it will be of expertise. So they are experts in political calculations and the political machinations of the Landsraad and the great houses therein. So they may be brokers in political information, or they may be deal makers in the political world, collecting IOUs from the other houses. So the final secondary domain will be in the area of religion and will be for workers. So in order to gain this political power and knowledge, they hide behind a guise of religious envoys. And so they train and send out religious workers and missionaries to the other planets and to the lesser known planets to gather their knowledgeable resources and their political power. Once the team has selected the domains, they will need to finalize the house traits. An in-depth description of traits and how to use them can be found in the core rules section of the rulebook starting on page 144. The brief overview is that traits can be applied to any relevant skill or combat test to change the difficulty of that test. For example, if a house has a trait of trustworthy in the religion area of domains, then they would be able to reduce the difficulty of convincing a local clergy member to believe them by 1. When playing, for 1 momentum point, any player can activate any house trait for a scene, giving them the effects of that trait as if they had it themselves. This can be used for as many traits as the house currently has and for any number of players as long as the team has enough momentum. This ability to apply a trait to the entire team can quickly tip the scales of a skill test that is within a house's domain. During the creation of a new house, a trait should be selected for each primary domain that the house has. Additionally, these traits need to be in the same area as the primary domain. The last trait that the house will have is the descriptive trait that defines the house, which you should have already determined during the creation of the house's background elements. So for House Centaur, we've already decided that the descriptive trait will be methodical. As for their secondary trait, primary domain is political understanding. So we've decided to give them the trait of diplomatic, as they are well versed in all of the aspects of diplomacy throughout the universe. So lastly, but probably more time consuming, are the roles and enemies. While roles and enemies won't have a mechanical effect on the game, they will help to drive the story, pacing, and direction of the sessions. Taking some time to get a few details regarding each role and information about the rival houses will give you a big head start on generating important NPCs, antagonists, and other story pinch points. So the major roles are the last aspect of the house that you'll need to create, and there's a list and description of those roles on page 92 of the core book. There are 2 ways to handle the house roles. The players can either fill the roles themselves or create NPCs that will help fill those roles. If the players decide to fill those roles themselves, this may direct the game to be more architect play than agent play, as the team uses those resources and gives out more directions and orders than they would if they just simply answered to somebody else who was in charge. It's helpful to have the players give a bit of input for each role of the house if they're choosing not to play those roles themselves. Providing that input will give them a connection to these special members of the house and will provide the NPCs more impact in-game. Additionally, if you have the roles filled by NPCs initially when starting the campaign, then this may give the players a more clear path of growth as they choose to climb the ranks of the house and possibly eventually become trusted advisors to the ruler. So once the player's house has been completed, it's time to build up their rivals. Again, the number of rival houses is dependent on the house type that is chosen, but in general, the bigger the house, the more enemies that house has. Similar to the roles, the players will have more buy-in if they help craft the antagonists themselves. The more NPCs or ideas they provide to build out the enemy houses, the more it will add to the impacts those houses can have when they appear in your sessions. If you and your players are struggling to fill out the details, you can run through the random tables that are provided in the core rulebook on pages 96 and 97 to get a good start. So one note, as you complete the house or move from one step to another, don't be afraid to go back and tweak or add to anything that may have been changed during the previous discussions. Flexibility is definitely important, especially as you go through the house creation process and even into the early sessions of the game to make sure that the house works for the game that your players want to play in, as well as for the story that's being told between you and your players. So I hope this video was helpful. For more Dune videos, you can check out our channel, and thank you for watching.